malevolent villains of our movie. They are not easily dealt with. Use snow, ice, water to terrifying effect. In the comics, you have sort of blob-like snowy frost giants. Sometimes you have Yeti-style hairy frost giants. We wanted creatures who looked like they'd been starved. They were leaner, there were less things in the way. It wasn't a question of them keeping warm in a cold place. They absolutely were adapted to a cold place.
They were very spooky, sort of like things as opposed to people.
So we were getting away from anything soft, cozy, Christmas-like, Jack Frost-like. They were dirty characters. I'm just thinking, again, liking potentially, maybe Kevin doesn't go too sort of dinosaur-y, yes. We needed to cast their leader. A character like this needs to be complex. Needs to be a great military leader, tactician. He needs to give all that.
Judicious quick look, as in now I've got you, old man, and then he... Yes, sir. After it. Excellent.
Colin has, 17 seasons with the Stratford, Ontario company up in Canada, so he has a vast range of experience when it comes to complicated and evil characters.
In a sense that it takes more to push this creature off the ice.
Determination, that's true. He was able to use the kind of economy that means with a character like that, often in repose, there's a stillness, there's a dangerous stillness, and what you get is the potential. You hint at this lethal, deadly thought.
And I can bring that to bear to this poor, misunderstood guy.
They're beyond diplomacy now, Father.
From the moment he starts to speak, your heart beats a little quicker.
Get what he came for. War and death.
He just had that character down to a T. He was so incredible, and it really made the hairs on your spine rise, because it was just, he's so powerful, his voice.
In trying to define the shape and sound of him, we used other actors and similar vocabularies that we have from the theater and things like that, and saying, okay, we could be, this could be the sound. Thailand is now, sadder, broken, remote, misty. And so that should be reflected in the sound of it, not just the word.
Imagine, if you will, mountain voiced by Ken Pratt. This is likely how it's going to turn out.
As frightening, odd that his final lousy look was, it had to kind of convey a personally tragic, tortured, angry soul. And I think that our sculptor on that makeup with his Aryan tubing really captured the essence and allowed a lot of foam space to come through, which was very, very helpful. Looking at this again, this one's kind of interesting. It kind of feels like what Alex was
The design work is just spectacular. It's come together. Blue skin, red eyes, a face still very much recognizable to get the performance.
Once we establish the armament, then we will sketch in the scars. You know what I mean? We can't do that until we know what's placement you're happy with the placement of the armor. Like right now, I love the idea of jade into the skin. Now we know we can do something etched around in stars.
Because the character is virtually naked, it was very important that he's scarred, he's hacked up. He shows his weary engagement in trying to top dog, not working out. So he is scarred. Sit in the chair, and V. Neil and the genius Aryan, who has both sculpted and is doing his first makeup job, putting this on me. We sit down and we start painting me blue. I'm glued in to a bald cap. There's a big skull piece, forehead piece, cheek pieces, jaw pieces, nose pieces. And they all go on in sequence. There's at least eight pieces to do just the face and neck. Once we're happy with that, we painted the hands blue, then nails, we paint, we glue. It's ridiculous.
See, I want them to see your skills and your genius, not just your hair.
Colin did an amazing job. Just incredible job. His voice, it was just terrifying.
From day one, the enthusiasm that comes out of that guy is epic,
Wonderful lad. It was fun to work. We had some great scenes together.
And this, now, your boy.
But this is ours, and we've given it an enormous amount of thought. And so, I'm proud to say I think we've come up with something that will be of interest to people.
The first challenge with a hammer is to work out how to pronounce it, which is Mjolnir in our movie at the moment. Until somebody corrects me, I'm sure they will. Mjolnir, the hammer, this awesome.
Thor can do that hammer. What he's been visualized doing in the comics over 45 years is spectacular stuff.
Now getting more and more acquainted with the detail of the comics, I'm surprised at quite how much the hammer can do.
He can create lightning storms, tornadoes. He can control the elements.
The power of a sort of galactic nuclear.
He flies with it, spins around his hand and off he goes.
He'll throw that hammer, no matter what it hits, it'll always come back to him. This has given us some of the most iconic and spectacular.
The process that we go through for any of the props, and this one in particular, was very long and exciting and fun, and in that we pull our team together, and everyone knows a little something about the hammer, and it's very important to capture all that. And so this particular piece went through a process of illustration. We drew almost 200 Mjolnirs.
I think every time I drew Thor, almost, I did a hammer. Charlie had done a lot of variations. He did probably like 60 or 70 different variations at the very beginning of the project.
They paid a lot of attention to paying homage to that Viking hero, which is all the Norse mythology that Thor is based on.
There is significance to everything we've done on the hammer. There are runes on the top of the hammer. Sort of went back and forth and decided what needed to be on this hammer, because there's a lore involved that you don't sway from in certain areas, and this is one.
It goes back to Kirby. So trying to fit those together, I think that's kind of where we started. I think that's also where Ken was like, he does want to get Kirby in there and not completely lose the Norse.
Stan Lee and Jack Kirby created Thor, and the design work is just spectacular. It's coming together.
Stan Lee and Jack Kirby, when they wrote these worlds, they just took our world and tweaked it just a touch.
I was thinking, what can we do that's different? And as far as I knew, there was no god who was a superhero taken from legend. So I thought, let's see, we could do Mars, we could do Jupiter, but somehow I thought to myself, the Norse gods, people don't know as much about them as they do about the Greek and Roman. It would be fun to do a Norse god. And Thor just sounded so dramatic. Thor with his mighty hammer.
The way it's going to emanate light from within it, the way the storm is actually going to emanate from it out into the world, I think, and even the way it's going to swing above his head. We're going right to those comic covers. In every sequence, we want to hit at least 2 or 3 classic Thor images.
And so you have Mjolnir. It was kind of guesswork as to what the scale was going to be. So I started with a base size hammer, and then I made 2 hammers that were 5% larger and 2 hammers that were 5% smaller, so that when we finally did get Chris in person, we just went through a process of handing him every hammer and did a screen test and sort of saw visually what would work best for him. We basically have 3 weights of hammer. If we're doing a scene where there's a lot of dialogue and that you'll see the hammer close up, you unfortunately have to wield the heaviest hammer. The heavier the hammer, the more detail it'll give you.
We'd sort of swap and choose whatever we could get away with. And offer the lighter one we'd use that, because there's so much movement in the thing. And having to even in the costume hold your arm up like this is a battle, because the whole thing is thick leather and pieces of metal sort of positioning in this guy, so he's sort of pushing like 70, 80 pounds above your head.
We make it so that they're interchangeable. You can see that I can unscrew this and change the heads out from a heavy to a lightweight hammer.
The stunt stuff where we were hitting people was kind of more the softer rubber ones, and then the close-ups were big, shiny, very heavy kind of hammer.
This one, I would tell you, was 8 pounds. The foam one gets down to about 2.5 pounds, and he's able to throw it, and catch it, and do the things he does.
When the rehearsals, I started kind of spinning it a lot and kind of working out what I could do without it being, let's do something with the special effects.
Many more things. We get to invest his weaponry with awesome powers.
Well, what if it's all the way out?
It's Excalibur, you know, it's the sword in the stone. It has to have that power. When we see it, boy, you're going to know.
Okay, here we go. Action!
It's been terrific. He was the main attraction because how he makes it easy. He's a wonderful director. He's got that rare ingredient of being not only a great actor but a great director.
Okay, sure. What's so interesting about Kendall is his background, his character, Shakespeare, you know, to come and do a huge blockbuster type film like this, I think was genius.
You should feel as though you're taking as much care with it as possible, as you can do. And then as soon as you touch down the line, and I think moving forward, because it's to do with that energy of getting back to home.
Yeah, sure.
He's very, very emotionally engaged with us, and he just has such an amazing way of attacking the text from so many different angles that you wouldn't necessarily think of yourself. He just brings all these layers, brings out things in you that you would never think about.
He sort of pushes you in every single angle that the character can go. And anytime it was sort of feeling like the norm, it would be like, no, let's do something else. Let's try something else.
Look, do one more back.
When you've got a good director like Kenneth Branagh, he pushes you that extra mile.
Very effective. You need to be leaning back like that. What is it like when you just lean forward and take it?
And you say, yeah, that's great. He's very cunning. You say, yeah, that's great. Okay, let's do one more, just a bit more. You say, okay, yeah, we got it. But let me just try this one more, just add this to it.
But it would just be in those moments, the dramatic moments, you get there. Yeah. Just keep it going. Okay. Anytime you stop, boom. And then time to look back, boom.
He knows that I like give me more, take me deeper, take me further, you know, lighter, a brighter bonfire underneath me so I can play this scene appropriately.
The kind of thing that's what you direct us. So detailed and specific and always demands specificity from us, which is really great.
This is a question mark that we're putting through. Don't let it settle, don't let the scene resolve at the end. Be grateful for the offer of help. But keep that question mark up. This could be the end of various friendships.
Yeah. Ken's leadership is really making this a very, very unique project.
Energy of people who like respect each other, they without rank, but with passion. Okay? And they need to feel that passion all the way through.
He is maybe the most inspiring person I've ever met in my life. He's another one I creepily watch. You know, just try to soak up some of the
Give me my inspiration back to being an actor again, because I've been beginning to think, I've been doing this too long, and he comes along and says, no, come on, I'm going to be working against in a heartbeat.
There we go. Acting great, one more thing great, please, a bit of
We met Chris Hemsworth early in the process as we explored who Thor would be. We knew when he came in for a screen test and told a story of Thor's exploits, and he did it with such relish, such fun, a sense of danger. He was able to occupy the character of Thor in a way that seemed just right to us.
I'm Thor Odinson.
For this film to work, you've got to love everyone. You've got to be behind it. Chris does humor, and sorrow, and strength in such an honest way. And I've never seen someone throw themselves at work.
He worked really hard to make himself sort of that godly physique.
6'3", 6'4", very impressive looking physique that takes the kind of intense physical build-up we put him through. I can't tell you how exciting it was to see Chris walk out with that flowing red cape and holding that hammer. Yes, that's Thor. Here he is. He's come to life.
Wonderful working with Chris. He's a great actor. We had some great scenes.
His natural suit as an actor is a sensitivity and a kind of thoughtfulness. So we had to push him to really slice the ham sometimes in a way that Thor thought was being impressive, because it was part of the very pleasing arc from a thoughtless man to a thoughtful man. two worlds collide. Brilliant Earth scientist, woman of passion that allows Thor without powers to work out how he gets back home.
We wanted to find somebody who fit that mold of being a love interest for a superhero, but at the same time, who you would believe is that intelligent and is that smart and can go toe-to-toe with every other character in the movie, and in fact can lead to a grand discovery of what and who Thor is. And we were very lucky to get that one.
Natalie is beautiful and talented, and we love working with her. She's great.
Out comes this intensely living woman. You see it happen in front of the camera. She's really there. She's not afraid.
I can't just leave him there.
Why not?
You didn't see what I saw.
Anthony Hopkins was someone who was a fan of Kent's and thought the role would be exciting. So he was someone who's very, very
Not necessarily many actors who can easily play the king of the universe, a man who runs the entire nine realms, who also can be a military leader, a father, sometimes stern, sometimes a little remote, sometimes over demanding, and have all of those qualities live very close to each other and got weight, like an oak tree when you stand, all of those things presented without any effort. That sort of quality may not have in abundance.
I've never worked with anyone like him. There's no one who knows character, I think, better than him.
Anthony Hopkins has been kind of masterclass in a way. I remember the scene where Odin banishes Thor to Earth, and it's just the three of us in the observatory. We were doing all of Tony's coverage first. He did a couple of takes, and they were all fantastic. Like, I mean, they were just amazing. And Ken came up to Tony and he said, let's just do one more before we break for lunch. On this one, let him break your heart a bit. Let me see the heartbreak. And he went, okay.
So I come into the scene and I start sort of, doing my thing, and he's just silent and just starts to kind of tear up a bit.
You have betrayed the express command of your king. For your arrogance and stupidity, you have opened these peaceful realms and innocent lives to the horror and desolation of war.
Everything I'd said before he started speaking, it's tearing his heart out, and he's just struggling saying these words.
Unworthy of your title! You're unworthy of the loved ones betrayed.
And they called cut. People were crying, and people started applauding. And I remember saying, that's amazing. Drop the hammer, I'm out.
Someone like that takes it a little further and feels like a moment that illuminates something about the moment. It's just very exciting to watch very talented people do their job really well. If you have any hand in helping them, it's a big satisfaction.
Marvel Universe, it's called the Universe for a reason. It's a big place. On film, up to this point, we've explored a lot of the ground-based heroes. We're going to a cosmic level before.
The challenge is really this combination of the spectacular visual and physical world of Asgard, the world of the gods, with the world of contemporary Earth.
Bo Welch, a production designer, did an amazing job.
He had a wonderful sense of unique vision, but the source material was always present. He just pushed it to its height, and that's what Asgard was doing.
The challenge was other worlds, multiple dimensions. When you sit down and study all the various runs of comics, they're wildly different from one run to the next, so your visual cues are all over the place. I've got one foot in Jack Kirby land, who generated, I think, the iconic imagery of Thor. I've got one foot in Norse mythology, and I've got one foot in beautiful, perfect, modern, Zen-like architecture, so that there's room for these elaborate characters and costumes to breathe.
Asgard needs to find a way to capture what Kirby designed and created on the page, and find a way to translate that into a wonderful new scale and size that's amazing film. And those team did a beautiful job imagining these things, and it was no easy process. We went through many designers and many designs to kind of get us to this place.
In talking with Ken, we had decided that Asgard is inhabited by warrior gods, but that they live at the top of the nine realms. Their privileged perspective on the universe should be so advanced and elegant that it should not be cluttered with the normal details that we associate human beings with. The technology, the building construction, the methodology of their architecture is so advanced the human brain cannot even comprehend it.
This film didn't have a whole lot of green screen. They built these incredible, huge sets. It could have been really sort of ethereal and just godlike, but they paid a lot of attention to paying homage to the Viking hero, which is all the Norse mythology that Thor is based on.
I came here and walked around the sets, and I thought, well, that's it. I don't have to do much. I just show up and put on the armor and let it happen.
The throne room was mind-boggling. That was the scene I'd look forward to, the scene with Loki when he's on the throne. It's such an archetypal image in the comics, and I walked into that set and I thought, this costume with these horns and the spear in this throne, in this room, you've got your shot.
You can bring your urgent matter to me. Your king.
There's a lot of restraint in Asgard so that these very elaborate costumes and bigger than life, almost godlike characters have room around them and the focus is on them. There is such a plethora of choices inside the nearly 50 years of Thor comic looks from great artists that you need someone of great taste, I think, to find ways that you can tip your hat to certain inspiring, iconic versions of the characters, but let it live contemporary cinema.
So is this how you normally look?
More or less.
It's a good look.
Alex Byrne, the costume designer, she's an Oscar winner. She is unafraid of the sort of theatricality of some of the costumes.
Obviously, I started with comics. I would say the biggest input for Asgard was the original artwork of Jack Kirby. The world he created is amazing.
Asgard into that singular voice of, this is the expression of Asgard. A good example is, if you saw Sif, you could tell immediately because of how she looked that she was from Asgard.
For the population of Asgard, I wanted to keep the idea of the comic book graphics where he ombres out the crowd and keeps it very monochrome, and that seemed a very good way to keep the population of Asgard present but not distracting. We have the actors, we have faces, we have human proportions, and the biggest challenge of this is how to make them look like real people, albeit gods, but they're real in terms of not people wearing silly clothes.
We're trying to hint at things that are technological and really advanced, but we can't really show them in a way that would make it feel like it was from our world. So it becomes a challenge, and I think that a lot of the stuff that we try to do is just make it a really amazing looking costume.
Here are a couple of Thor images that you can see that were done very early on. You can see a lot of the Norse designs this is the actual Norse symbol that took apart, abstracted into his arm. And then this was the attempt at trying to modernize him. It was based off of kind of the ultimate design of Thor that smashed in with a modern take of some Norse design. One of the things that we were trying to do was play a lot with fabric weaving in and out of metal, just to kind of give a different feel of Asgard. It's a different culture, a different place, so it's not something that we usually see today that we wear. I think the most challenging thing is trying to come up with all these characters that had to fit into Asgard. You try to figure out, do they live here? Were they part of this culture? How much influence did they have from outside? And trying to get that balance, it was a challenge, but it was also what was fun about the project.
One of the things that I enjoy doing working on this project is being sort of a middle ground between what the comics is, trying to take it into an illustrated realm that adds a little bit more reality to it, and then having a costume designer have that as a basis for them to work from, to actually bring it into reality.
The cape is particularly demanding because it needs to look magical. In the comic books, Kirby uses it as a great graphic device for movement and tension and drama. So we needed to have a cape that could have that amount of expression, but also frame Chris's shape and proportion when he's not moving, and then billow and move, fly with him when he's fighting. The physicality and the movement is a huge component of these costumes. You can draw fabric till the end of the earth, but we wanted a cape that was going to behave so that it wasn't done in post-production. And we evolved the cape in the workroom, and that fed in with the way the artists were drawing, and we ended up with a cape that does do everything we wanted. It's not done in post-production.
Whether you believe in Thor's personal charisma as a character, you've got to give him an intention. It can't just be sort of squash and buckle. It can't be, morale's going, it can't be a sort of empty hurrah. This applies to cape. This applies to helmets. It applies to discs. You have to ask why. Okay, so why does he need the cape? Can it tell us a story about his position? Does it help him move better or worse? Can it give a visual signal to other characters? The helmet, what's it used for? Ceremonial, progressive. Always find a why. And so Alex Byrne was great at doing that.
I have to say we have a great team of actors because we played graphics are not easy. They do not take 5 minutes to put on.
It's about an hour into the costume. It's just layers and bits and pieces. The first couple of weeks we were pouring sweat and dying and stuff, and they came up with these cooling vests, which race car drivers wear, which are basically little vests with pipes that run cold water and cool you down.
I haven't quite counted how many pieces it takes to get this thing on, but it's an incredible piece of work. I mean, it makes you stand up straight. You know, there's no sitting around in jeans and a t-shirt ordering a frappuccino in this costume.
The costumes that we wear are quite hard, so when we walk, we don't slouch. We stand up because we physically cannot bend over. So that helps. It helps you carry that strength, that posture that a superhero would carry.
It kind of shifts your center of gravity, so the whole physicality of the character. No, it's quite a costume. It's the sexiest suit of armor out there, actually. I'd say that now, but I wouldn't tell that to others because they get upset, but they can clearly see.
And you may be taller, but I'm wider. Wow.
Helmets. Helmets were the big issue. I've done helmets before, but not on this scale. And that was great because we had digital forms of the actors that we could sculpt on those, because a helmet is so much about the proportion of the face, the eyes, the jawline, because they have to work in close-up.
In all my fittings way back, I kept thinking, when am I going to get the horns on? Because it's almost like the last piece of the jigsaw kind of becoming a character. Also about the brow, like what it does here, so it makes you look out from underneath it, which kind of gives you a little mischief, you know. It's good to have you back. This comes in 2 pieces, and the back, that's the back piece there, and then this comes off, like that, and it kind of slots together like this. There she is, in all her glory.
You have to be careful like Heimdall. The fusion of the worlds that Bo created and the designs that Alex came up with are so seamless that you feel like they were crafted on the same page.
The head forward, it looks a little more
You can't really talk about how necessary to our story. How do you get from one place to the other? And then how do you meet that challenge of perhaps the most colourful and one of the most memorable of images in all the comics is the Rainbow Bridge, the Bifrost, which goes like a sort of motorway or freeway all the way down from the great asteroid island in the sky that is Asgard at the top of the universe all the way down to Earth. We needed to come up with a real bridge, we felt, and then we needed the image and the sort of symbolic value of a bridge to suggest how energy articulates people or relates through, and we wanted that through light energy as well, light energy that occasionally evoked a rainbow. We found that a bridge and rainbows, those were good, strong, individualist starting points, and then our job was to make it cool. We spent a lot of time generating various versions of what the Rainbow Bridge should look like, and we looked at it just full on. Rain is never really static.
We've sort of locked into a look that relates to the quartz mineral, so if the Rainbow Bridge was built with quartz.
A physical representation of a proper environment that explains what is going on here. This is the portal from Asgard to the other 9 realms.
We always played with the banishment term. In early drafts, it was Earth the Viking era, and we developed that story for a while, but we started to realize the contrast between Asgard and Earth had to use. They were equally alien to the audience, and it didn't work as well. We realized we could open up a whole other avenue by bringing it to contemporary Earth.
After you've designed Asgard, Jotunheim, the Rainbow Bridge, Heimdall's, by comparison, Earth's like a holiday. Nevertheless, it has to fit within a cohesive universe within the film. I like the idea of a kind of idealized small-town America. In this case, a sort of small-town New Mexico with a sort of hopperish kind of quality to the layout of the streets and to some of the buildings and to those shapes to mirror and resonate some of the shapes in Asgard, because we needed both to celebrate the distinction between the worlds and the approaches, but also to make all of these images feel as though they belonged in the same movie. What we decided early on was that Asgard and the 9 realms are up there and they are causing disturbances in the sky. So a small town on a vast desert with a big sky was the concept. I wanted the little town on Earth into which Thor was tossed by his father to be almost a character, so that you would look at this town and its inhabitants and develop some empathy for it, so that when the destroyer came to Earth and started blowing it up, you would feel it in your heart. I mean, we wanted to feel real, and I think it does. audiences are incredibly sophisticated. You can't fool them with cheap synthetic versions of things. Everything has to be brilliantly executed. So Bo has offered dozens and dozens of different ways of looking at Earth. Of course, inspirations from the comics and inspirations from the desert in New Mexico.
Really one of the most beautiful places I've ever been in. There's so many incredible landscapes in such a small area. It's pretty incredible to, have a set where 360 you have beautiful mountains and sort of wide open spaces.
Being in the middle of this vastness meant that there's a little bit of Asgard in feel on Earth as well. Up there it's an island in the vast sea of space, and down in New Mexico it's an island in the vast sea of the desert.
The other thing I was hoping to achieve was to echo the design of Asgard. So on Asgard you have Heimdall's observatory, which is the entrance really to Asgard across the Rainbow Bridge to a central palace flanked by buildings. In our town, Puente Antigua, we have one street that comes out of the desert flanked by buildings leading to an old car dealership that in a weird way echoes the shape of the Asgard palace. It's a much more modest and heartbreaking version of Asgard. Nonetheless, I think it visually echoes the other.
They built the whole town, New Mexico. Very cute diners and shops and things, very personal little country town, which was a huge contrast to the castles and kingdoms in Asgard.
In the story, in the struggle between Thor and Destroyer, to me read like a showdown in a western town. So I thought, let's look at a western town. And that led me to the Tom Ford rant.
We had people that were out there for 6 months in New Mexico building this set. What they did to the town, Silverado, and this real town for America.
This town, which as you can see is a western town, we are converting it into a present-day town, which is not totally atypical of a small New Mexican town. Will be the kind of modern evolution of the old town that perhaps started out looking like something like this one looks right now. It's going to take several months of work to get this to a place where they can shoot it. We're going to start out with basically infrastructure work, putting in sidewalks, telephone poles, street lights, parking meters, roads, the things that make a town modern. And then we're going to recondition the facade, put in signage, and then there'll be a whole layer of set dressing that's really going to bring it to life.
The set design, it was just incredible. It made our job so much easier because we were surrounded by all this atmosphere. As you're walking down, you're like, I'm not on a set, but you are. It was so incredible, and every time we had to blow up one of the buildings or set something on fire, a little tear just rolled down the side of my face because I thought, I cannot see this destroyed.
Because we were going to blow this town up, we needed to have all the control we could, and so to be able to build specifically a heightened comic book, slightly more colourful, slightly more lit look than usual for the town of Puente Antigua was a choice that allowed us the kind of control over the framing of it. You go, oh, we're good on the profile. Getting into the schematics of all of that was fun.
I think one of the biggest excitements was actually seeing the Warriors and Thor on Earth, because we'd shot Asgard, we know it works, and anything. I think I know what it's going to look like, but how is it going to be when these guys start walking through a small town Earth?
Probably the biggest challenge is melding the Asgardian world with the human world, because it's very, very different styles. So we were acting the scenes that are just humans, we were doing it like a regular movie, and then all of a sudden we had a scene with Asgardians where, the Asgardians come and visit, and they walked off of this very sort of heightened reality, and then the two worlds meeting. We were confused about how we should meet tonally and performance-wise so that we all make each other look believable.
That was very strange kind of way. We're looking for Thor and we come right up to the window where we found him, so it's like, oh, do! And then to look on the stuff here and on stage first, because where you inhabit the scale of Asgard, you bring that to Earth because you were able to have that emotional memory. This is what you're doing, you're maintaining your gods on Earth.
Bo Welch has made it very real. He's made two separate worlds identifiable. He's made it so real that you can say, you know what, I grew up in Texas, I've been in a town like that, I've lived in a town like that with a main street and everything, and these sets here in Asgard are something that you can see in your dreams.
Constantly contrasting. There's such a beautiful element that.
Fanciful and wild universe that feels just as real as the music.
What we want to do is bring visuals to the screen that people haven't seen. Never mind what they've seen in a movie before, but having not seen it in a movie. At the same time, giving you more of the aesthetic of wish fulfillment, of that relatable, of the journey of redemption.
It's hard being an action story to really hope that you can claim original or unique images, but I think that the fabric of THOR provides them. I think that we've been brave enough to meet that challenge visually, to really enjoy the scale and the scope. That was exciting.